The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. This country tonight, and as always it is my pleasure to join you live wherever you're watching, in your hands or on your big screen. Of course, live Monday through Thursday through 7 o'clock. Booming out of your speakers, it could be tomorrow, or in your earpods. They're the new thing. On demand, on podcast. The honour is all mine that you turn to Chalres Country for your wisdom, community and hope through this time. It is so rewarding, so thank you. Honestly, the community that we have built every day here on Chalres Country over the last 6 weeks is truly special. You know, being able to bring together every day the knowledge of our experts, the love we have for each other in the rural community, and the hope that we have a bright future ahead of us. It's so remarkable. Now, if you're new to the show, I'm your host, Sarah Perry. I'm here with you for the next hour across 10 different platforms live all at once. And then on podcast, first thing in the morning. So if you're new to podcast, make sure you search Chalres Country and give it the big old subscribe. You can listen to the individual interviews or, of course, the full show. New Zealand is being let out of lockdown, of course. Yesterday we moved to the news to move to level 2 on Thursday was announced by Jacinda Ardern. And of course, we have the freedom within reason to move about more freely, which is the envy of the rest of the world. Joel, as we always do after the show, we catch up with Megan, our Chalres Country social media manager. She's based in the UK and Scotland. It's a bit different over there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole other world over there right now. They're still in lockdown and probably are going to be for quite a wee while, I'd say. Yeah.
A level 4, Megan was saying, so even potentially for another 3 weeks, Scotland of ignoring the UK moving quickly.
Yeah, no, Scotland are sticking to level 4 and letting England do their own thing for a wee bit. Yeah.
We're very lucky being super isolated, and I think again it's about keeping things in perspective of how lucky we are here in New Zealand. Chalres Country, of course, is an interactive show sharing your comments below, and tonight I want to get to know you a little bit better. So I want to know, where are you going to be heading this weekend? Are you gathering in groups of under 10 people, of course, and your family, your neighbours, or your friends? What restaurants have you booked into? Please mention them in the comments below. I love getting to know you. It's all amazing having, of course, those repeat offenders watching along live every night and new people popping up as well. I'm going to take a flight. I've been waiting for weeks to make sure a good mate of mine is okay. A few bottles of Bobby's Pinot Noir from home, and just, of course, to be in another bubble would be great. This show is about your questions for our guests, so make sure to ask them in advance so that I can see them here on the old fax machine that I've got sitting here. No, it's a laptop. I'm just joking. But early enough, please, so that I can read them out, because, of course, I want to get your questions to our guests. So, of course, who are our guests you're wanting to know coming up in tonight's show? The needs for water storage to be deemed a shovel-ready and budget-ready government fiscal policy is a no-brainer to rural New Zealand. So after 7:20, we are joined by CEO for Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal, to discuss her budget wish list as we lead into, of course, Chalres Country's budget special this Thursday from 7 o'clock. Don't miss it. And to close the show, with the devastating blow to our tourism sector, we understand that for our food and fibre exports, it's so important to pull New Zealand's economy through that our trade relationships and supply lines are maintained in good nick. Winston Peters today has been criticised for bringing strife to our bilateral ties with China. I want to discuss the blowback from here and, of course, Australia on the criticism of China's handling of COVID. Where is that China-US relationship at, as Trump's walked out of a press conference today? So I go to, at the end of the show, a very respected trade commentator, Chalres Finny, after 7:40. As I said, get your questions in early in the comments below. On Thursday, we were joined by the lovely Poppy Renton behind the Hawke's Bay Drought page. Last night, we had Mark Harris from Beef and Lamb New Zealand. And tonight's turn, it's the Wairarapa farmers, Daniel Hansen and his wife Sophie, who are gathering feed in their region to send to their northern neighbours through the Facebook page, the Rapper Feed Run. So after 7:30, we're going to continue our series of walking beside our fellow farmers through the dry to make sure they know they are not alone. First up to kick off the show, many questions around this net zero carbon debate and how we will achieve this goal. Nuffield New Zealand scholar Cam Henderson is going to join us next to explore links between agriculture and energy and how technology could work to harness farmed energy sources, including waste matter, to supply national energy needs. While we'll get Cam on the line, here is a great on-farm story produced recently by the talented Ash Robinson from Global HQ about Cam Henderson's farming journey. This is Sarah's Country.
Dairy farming has had a really good run over the last probably 20 to 30 years, but that's not to say that it's always going to do that. What we might have done 10 or 20 years ago may not be appropriate these days. You go through that process of saying, oh, it's not me, it's not a problem I have to worry about, you kind of deny it, and then you get angry at all the regulations that are coming along, but after a while you do sort of understand where they're coming from and the basis of the whole dirty dairying campaign and feel like, well, actually, perhaps we do need to do something about it. And once you start on that path, it's actually, I find it quite enjoyable that you can actually see some environmental development as well on the farm, which, it's a sense of pride, really. I'm Cam Henderson and I'm a dairy farmer in Oxford. Currently farming 240 hectares under irrigation, milking 720 cows this season and aiming for about 340,000 milk solids. I look after the farm as an operations manager and I have a contract milker here with a team of 3 and they look after all the milking side of things and I look after our support farm functions. Nearly 10 years ago when I first came down to Canterbury, it was where all the opportunity was. Lots of irrigation and growth and big money to be made, so I guess I followed that trail down here from the North Island. And in that time I've had some fantastic payouts, some really good weather, had some really tough times with low payouts coinciding with droughts, and it's been a real roller coaster. There's always going to be questions with any business as to why we do things the way that we do. Rather than having a dig at each other and say, well, it's not us, it's them, just to sort of take a sense of responsibility and say, look, we're all stewards of the land, that rather than continually being defensive, can we be a bit more proactive about this and actually create something that farmers and New Zealanders can be really proud of. It's been really encouraging actually in the Waimak district here, a number of local guys that are really keen to pick up on that and saying, look, we know there's some real big issues out there, how can we actually be a part of this? Because ultimately it's going to be better if we can help fix those issues rather than wait to be chased by councils with a big stick to fix them for us. Farming does tend to be portrayed simply as a business and about money, and farmers are greedy, and that quite often can be the perception that comes through. There's a lot of keyboard warriors out there that like to have their say on all these things. So yes, okay, there's some bad eggs in the industry. Most farmers would probably like to see them exit as well. We don't want to let those few taint the image for everybody else. And so for those everybody else to get out there and share their story is really important.
As always, you lot are starting to get even more and more active in the comments every single night. I'm so proud of you. So let's read out some of these comments. Daniel is saying he is seeing his future wife for the first time in 6 weeks. He can't wait. I bet you can't. Daniel. Katrina McMillan, Sunday family roast. Isn't it lovely? There's nothing more about having family together around an eating experience. Feeding out, baking for the drought farming run. Good on you, Renee. And Chris Ford, of course, whatever with Wiggy. I haven't given a shout out, but what Wiggy is doing, this is Craig Wiggins, every Thursday night at 8 o'clock is something quite special, pulling people together on his Zoom. So go and check that out. So thank you. We're talking about what you're most looking forward to under level 2. I'm very looking forward to seeing my pregnant sister in the North Island and just making sure that she's okay and that the nursery's coming along. So let me know in the comments below. What are you most looking forward to under level 2? Now, agriculture has been in the spotlight, of course, under the net zero carbon debate, contributing 48% of New Zealand's greenhouse gases. The energy sector sits a close second, though, at 41% of total emissions, but has yet to receive the same pressure to mitigate its emissions. Of course, we have certainly seen a bit of a change of understanding there under the lockdown. Canterbury farmer and Nuffield scholar Cam Henderson believes the two sectors should work together more closely to collectively lower emissions. So Cam spoke this week in a up-and-coming story with Richard Rennie for Farmers Weekly and joins us now. Evening, Cam.
Good evening, Sarah.
Firstly, can you give us a little bit of a background on your farming career, where you are in mid-Canterbury, and what led you to this passion around this particular topic, to travel, of course, the world with your Nuffield scholarship?
Yeah, sure. I've been in Canterbury, in North Canterbury, based just outside of Oxford, about 40 minutes inland from Christchurch. Been here for about 10 years. We converted the dairy farm from an old sheep station, and prior to that, I was born and bred in the Waikato, dairy import from the North Island, so like many of us down here. So I guess Canterbury's been a bit of a hotbed for environmental impacts for a while, mostly the nutrients, but I guess there's been a gradual drift into the greenhouse gas issue as well, which has seen a lot more attention over the last few years. And I guess I saw farmers' focus had been firmly fixed on the nutrient side of things, and thought, well, actually this greenhouse gas issue could be something that sneaks up on us and really wasn't getting enough attention. So I wanted to look at what options were available overseas for mitigation, and actually took it a lot further than what I first expected, and instead of just mitigating options on farm, to actually helping other sectors mitigate their options as well, so whether there can be a win-win situation out of this. So that's really where the topic came from.
Interesting. So I'm just going to show anaerobic digesters capable of turning effluent into biogas is what you've been looking into. And of course, electricity generating solar arrays, some of the options you've visited during your study. Can you explain how in depth the technology is around the world and where New Zealand can catch up on? Or is this a new space?
The basis of the technology has been around for a while, and has actually got a strong history of being tested in New Zealand. But like a lot of climate technology, it's developing pretty quickly. And New Zealand's technology is fallen behind what's going on overseas. So it's not only anaerobic digesters, which take any sort of biomass, that can be manure, it can be stubble from crops, it can be any sort of waste biological product, and turn it into a gas that can either be burnt or used like a natural gas in any other natural gas type system. There's solar power, wind power, on-farm hydro. A lot of these options are being used on small scale around the world. So the technology all exists. There's not really any need for any new innovation in this space. What the key factor is internationally that we don't have here in New Zealand is the policy and incentive to really encourage farmers to take up some of these activities.
Yeah, and you say here that it's around the carbon prices and carbon storage schemes where we've got the things out of whack to give that incentive. Have you got any sort of comparisons around the incentive to plant out valuable farmland and forestry versus how this can be an incentive?
Yeah, sure. I guess probably the one big example wasn't so much in forestry, was in solar panels. Over in California, farmers there can install solar panels and generate electricity throughout the year, and then they get the full retail price of that solar power for the entire year, so long as their demand and their supply match from an annual basis. So in New Zealand, when we have a solar panel on the house, we really only get the economic incentive to use that power as it's being generated, whereas internationally, there are policies that just encourage farmers or any users of solar panels to generate power year round. It adds quite a lot to the economics of some of these scenarios, when you can generate power at 24 cents a kilowatt hour versus what we can get here in New Zealand at 7 cents a kilowatt hour.
So, Cam, I understand that you have been harvesting solar to power your family farming dairy shed. Of course, you've got those massive wintering barns, which would be fantastic for solar and putting it into the grid. My concern, though, where a lot of this has fallen down, is the calculations and the accounting systems around this are just too complicated. It's just easier to tax on stock units.
It is, and I think for most farmers there is a lot of technology in the background there that most of us just don't understand. I had no idea about it when the solar panels were first installed. I needed a lot of support to do it. But there aren't really many vendors in New Zealand that are specialising in this type of technology. And there again, they don't really have the policy to back them up to warrant putting together some of these really neat programs and installation packages for farmers. So I think it's there again, it came out of one of the recommendations was to develop better systems for farmers to be able to install, rather than just throw the technology at them and say, here, make what you can of it, to actually design some systems that work well for farms in different parts of the country.
It is a real shame that, of course, we don't have the physical field days where we can see these things in action. Now, this anaerobic digester, Lorna Hum has said that she saw a really good one in action in Scotland and that it's very much a part of our future. What are some of the barriers and who do we need to lobby to be able to encourage the incentives around this type of energy, circular energy, basically?
It does come down to price. That anaerobic digesters are quite expensive to install and to run, and internationally, particularly for dairy systems, they generate a lot more manure because they house their animals year round, can capture all that manure and feed it directly into the digesters. So we simply just don't generate on a per farm basis enough effluent for a lot of these systems to work. But there's quite a few being built in the likes of California and Ireland that are using other feedstocks as well. So I mentioned earlier, crop stubble, you can throw in old silage, straw, even some being developed to throw old willows and trees into as well. So really anything biological you could throw in. And there's a biodigester in Germany on a farm where they're generating enough gas that they've converted a tractor to run on the biomethane generated by the anaerobic digester. So the farm is becoming more circular in terms of its energy use. So the technology there, again, all exists. We just haven't developed the systems that work well here in New Zealand yet.
Imagine that when we have that major marketing incentive to be not only carbon neutral but circular in our waste systems as well. There's just so many layers to that. So Cam, thank you so much for taking a year out of your life to be able to bring this insight through your Nuffield Scholarship. And of course, we need to give a shout out. You will have some webinars coming up shortly that people can get on and watch and learn more about your report.
Yep, that's correct. Yes, it's a little bit more detail, and I can talk through some more of the scenarios and what I saw while I was travelling for the year.
So go to ruralleaders.co.nz to subscribe to those webinars that were announced out actually today in terms of date. Cam, before I let you go, a number of parents saying they're really looking forward to their kids going back to school. That's their level 2 thing. What is yours?
Well, actually, my first child was born on the first day of lockdown. So she has yet to meet a large chunk of the family. So the first thing we did once we heard level 2 was coming up was book some flights home to my family in the Waikato. So little Annie gets to meet her grandparents and all the family on my side of the family. So that's something really special that we can look forward to.
That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, and congratulations on everybody listening and watching to be able to bring a beautiful girl under lockdown. I've also got some friends I can't wait to give a wee cuddle to the little one as well. That's Cam Henderson, Nuffield Scholar there on Chalres Country. Now, where are we? Yeah, we've got so many comments coming in. You guys are absolutely getting amongst. You've found your thumbs. I'm very happy about that. Lovely to see you, Misha. Misha Wilkinson, I had a very beautiful Pinot. Misha's vineyard, you must check it out. I had a lovely Misha's in the weekend, so great to see Misha's watching right now. Coming up next on Chalres Country, we're going to be talking water, one of my favourite topics, and on the wish list of this, what I'm going to call the helicopter budget, with Elizabeth Soal from Irrigation New Zealand.
Hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
If you're watching along there live, of course, meettheneed.org, the charity where farmers are donating the value of their animals in partnership with Silver Fern Farms to feed our most needy here in New Zealand and their partnership with City Missions. It's incredible. When we had Wayne Langford on the show not that long ago talking about the launch of Meet the Need, how far one cattle beast can go. And I certainly know this. Father Bob, he thought, no, this processing backlog, he'd start his own sort of little butchery, and the meat packs that are coming up from Central. Oh, goodness gracious. And I tell you what, one cattle beast does go a long way. Thank God he's got the generousness to feed lots in his family with these wonderful Bobby's Butcher packs. So thoroughly enjoying it. So if you want to get involved in supporting Meet the Need, head along there and check out how to donate, or please talk to your processor, your procurement buyer at Silver Fern Farms about donating at least one animal. It makes a huge difference to our most vulnerable. Now, in a great article last month, Annette Scott in Farmers Weekly reported that Irrigation New Zealand has welcomed the government's call to seek out infrastructure projects ready to kick into gear once the construction industry resumes business. Economic Development Minister Phil Twyford and Infrastructure Minister Shane Jones says the government has tasked a group of industry leaders to seek out infrastructure projects ready to start as soon as possible. And I want to know how many of them are shovel ready in the water game. Of course, we've got the budget this Thursday, and I want to see where the spinning coin is going to land in these table of promises. So joined on Xero's Country now, we have CEO of Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal, to talk through this wish list. Good evening, Liz. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Really looking forward to getting stuck into a Xero's Country budget special this Thursday and unpacking what is and not in this year's major helicopter budget. Optimistically cautious, I could imagine that you are, having been involved in these conversations with government saying, we want to support you. How much has been pre-promised and how much funds towards water storage do you believe could be in this budget?
Well, like you say, the government has put together an infrastructure reference group to look at projects that can be shovel ready, and so get construction underway quickly as a means of kickstarting the economy in the post-COVID-19 world that we'll find ourselves in very soon. However, those are projects that are shovel ready, so that means that consenting's all happened, everything's ready to go, they just need to start construction. A lot of water infrastructure and water storage projects are not at the shovel ready stage yet. So what we are hoping for is for there to be a longer term water infrastructure strategy that incorporates 3 waters and a 4th water in relation to irrigation and rural water supplies. And so that's a bigger strategy as part of a larger infrastructure or water-related funding package that's outside of those shovel-ready projects, which we know there's certain money already earmarked to.
It's actually really frustrating when they shut down the Crown irrigation investments as this government came in, and then all of a sudden 3 years later expect those types of projects to be shovel-ready.
Well, some of them have been funded in a different way through the Provincial Growth Fund. Having said that, it's an entirely different sort of funding mechanism, and there are very specific criteria in relation to water and irrigation projects under the Provincial Growth Fund, and a lot of those projects that have got funding through them, it's in the form of loans. That the issue as well with the shovel-ready projects is I would imagine that there's going to be a lot more applications put through for consideration on that list than there will be funding available under that funding pool, and particularly for district councils that have aged water infrastructure that needs replacement. If it's going to be done properly and in a effective way so that all waters are considered together, that's where we think that it needs to be looked at in the round, and there needs to be a greater water strategy around it.
I mean, we all know that talking about water delays getting on with water as well, and it must be extremely frustrating. But I think that we've had a bit of a change of tune around the consensus, especially with Minister Shane Jones, in terms of multiple different small water storage infrastructure versus large. Where is that conversation sort of been in the last 12 months of change?
Yes. So the Provincial Growth Fund criteria specify that must be for smaller scale irrigation, and that can be from one farm to many farms, but there's certainly been a movement away from what's called mega irrigation schemes, although I'm not quite sure what the definition of that is. However, we've seen, for instance, what Hawke's Bay is going through right at the moment. We're in May, and yet they're experiencing extreme drought conditions, and that's going to have flow-on effects for the community and for the sector in that area for the next 12 to 18 months, if not more, as well as what it'll do for things like aquifer recharge and that sort of thing. So really, as these sort of drought events become more frequent under climate change, as they are forecast and predicted to, we need to start taking some action on these water issues now, rather than, like you say, talking about it before it gets worse.
Talking about the aquifer recharge, it's particularly in the Northland. Hugh Stringleman, a reporter for Farmers Weekly, was explaining that it's that dire that even a metre of rain wouldn't even touch the sides. And so when are we going to be able to get our head around protecting our aquifers and sort of capturing the sky, so to speak?
I hope it's sooner rather than later, because like I say, we're going to have more frequent drought events, but they'll potentially be punctuated by intense periods of rainfall. And so we need to be able to adapt our infrastructure and our planning systems to be a lot more flexible, to allow us to ensure that we have water available for not just farms, but for domestic supplies, for industry, for the environment, for cultural and recreation purposes, because aquifer recharge is really important for improving groundwater levels and quality, but it's also really important for providing surface water flows as well, because they are connected. So whether that storage is in the form of created reservoirs and dams, or whether it's through targeted managed aquifer recharge, so we can actually use the aquifers as a form of storage.
How are you progressing with the Water Commission concept?
That was certainly an idea that, as I understand it, has been floated for some time. We're not sure where all the policies are going yet in relation to the essential freshwater package. So there were recommendations being made to the government by the expert advisory panels, and a freshwater commission maybe have been a part of that. But we're not suggesting that it has to be a freshwater commission, but we do want there to be an overarching water strategy for New Zealand that guides decision making nationally, but also regionally and at the district level as well. What we certainly don't want to see is regions and territorial authorities having to compete essentially for funding from central government. We need to have a planned strategy that we're working towards as a country.
How much hope are you pinning on Thursday's budget?
It's really hard to tell, because we're in a completely different environment than what we thought we were going to be in 6 months ago. But having said that, like I say, with the trouble that the communities in Hawke's Bay are going through at the moment, and the need to invest in our primary sector and infrastructure projects to promote our economic and long-term resilience, the time is perfect to be having a serious discussion about putting some money into water and doing it in a planned way.
And if it's not now, it certainly will be going very loud into this year's election, I imagine. Yes. You wouldn't believe it, Liz, but there's a lot of people here that are very excited about seeing the back of their children. I know that you certainly wouldn't be one of those mothers.
No, absolutely not. Although I think my son might be happy to see the back of me and his dad. I'm not sure, and get back to his mates.
Oh, it's wonderful. What are you looking forward to under level 2, apart from that fact?
Apart from that, I'm really looking forward to having a little bluey pizza at Scott's here in Oamaru, and getting back on the squash court. Can't wait.
Oh, it's fantastic to be able to get back into those sports, and of course having live sport rather than replay on TV. It would be wonderful. Thank you so much. That's CEO for Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal, joining us in our budget lead up into the rural wish list as we speak every night to our industry leaders and hope and pray of what's in there for rural. So going to your questions, please keep them coming in. I want to know, under level 2, what are you and your family going to enjoy this weekend? Of course, we can travel now around the country. We can go to restaurants, not so much a nightclub, but of course for a good feed. And can I also say that my heart goes out to all of those families who haven't been able to farewell their loved ones over this time. We've lost 2 family friends over this time, and it's absolutely horrendous that what people have to go through. So my heart is absolutely with you. And let's hope that people can just start going and catching up with people and giving everyone a big hug this weekend. Are we allowed to hug, Joel? Are we over the elbow bumping? Because
I mean, maybe. As long as it's not a stranger.
Yes. Avoid close contact with strangers. Yeah, I've taken that on board. Now, next up on Sarah's Country, we are celebrating the people bringing hope to our farmers. Feed, in terms of feed availability going into the winter, as Elizabeth was just saying there, the dire situation in Hawke's Bay. The Rapper Feed Run, as it's known, has generated more than 10 truck and trailer loads of baleage in just 4 days, and I'm sure that total is higher now. Coming up in Sarah's Country, South Wairarapa farmer behind the initiative, Daniel Hansen, will join us shortly to discuss this.
The truth is, delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
Now, if you've just joined into Sarah's Country, of course we are live now, but we are in podcast on demand first thing in the morning. So if you're really getting into your podcasts, could you please give us a wee subscribe, and then you can take us with you in the truck whilst you're travelling along. Now, of course, we're talking tonight about the fun things that you're looking forward to doing in Level 2. I love to get to know you, our audience, because this is an interactive show. Put down, I'd love to know, lots of people looking forward to getting rid of the kids. I'd love to know which sort of restaurants you're keen to go. If you're flying anywhere, going away for the weekend, I'm looking forward to going away for the weekend. I'm heading out to the North Island, looking forward to a new bubble and catching up with a mate up there. So actually won't be too far away from our next guest. The Hensons, farming in the South Wairarapa, initially aimed to get every farmer on their road to either give or sell 1 or 2 bales. That's all it took to make a unit load. But of course, as all good Kiwi ideas, they grow rapidly out of control. And their Facebook page, Rapper Feed Run, is what we're discussing now. Daniel and I've just dragged in Sophie. Join us now, both of course behind the Facebook page. Firstly, on behalf of everyone watching and listening, can I just say congratulations on an awesome idea, and especially the generosity from you helping out your neighbouring cousins when, of course, I understand yourself don't have a large surplus of feed as well. How did you manage to get everyone in behind it when it's not that straightforward, that you're flush on one side of the hills to the other?
Yeah, I don't really know quite how we got so many people on board. It started as a small idea, and we thought we might get a few more, but actually we've just been so overwhelmed by the generosity of the farmers here and their willingness to just provide what they can.
Yeah, so, I mean, I said in the intro, prior, 10 truck and trailer loads over 4 days. Where are we at today?
As of just about 6 o'clock, we had 478 bales donated or at a very small cost provided to us to distribute.
What sort of difference will that make?
Huge. It'll be huge. The guys up there are in a desert, pretty much. So yeah, getting this to them will make a huge difference, and that's what we're keen to see.
Hopefully we can get, say, if we have a unit load going up, if that truck and trailer can be split between 2 farmers, that might help them for a couple of weeks to help get them through, find something else, see what they can source, and just help ease their mind.
Actually, the logistics have been something that we have criticised where MPI have put their funding, and of course they've come to the party. Gratefully we are around coordinators for feed. However, there is a lot of lessons that we've learnt from the past, and especially 2013 and even earlier in the 80s drought, where coordination and reducing costs, Mark Warren brought to my attention a lot of the government taxes and fuel taxes and ferry costs and things like that can actually help bring down these costs and subsidising. Is it so much that, or is it purely just the coordination that everybody can come together around their common need, which is feed?
I see it as both. I think it's a whole community effort. Transport is a huge cost. If it gets to the stage where feed needs to be brought up from the South Island, obviously anything to do with road users or ferry costs would greatly impact that. Of course, when the supply is low, demand and price goes up, and I think, Dan, you've heard of some pretty
I've
high
heard
prices.
$200 a bale, and that's ex farms in Hawke's Bay.
Landed.
So that's just daylight robbery, in my opinion.
Do you think this is really sort of teaching or exposing the cowboys that are taking the mickey out of a terrible situation?
I don't think it's going to expose the cowboys, but it'll just make people think that they are there, and just that makes people wary. I don't think it will expose them, because they'll just drift back into the woodwork and they'll come out later on. But that's.
What's been the one lesson that you've learned that we should implement on a sort of annual adverse events response type committee, that regardless of the region, we kick into action this particular system?
Yeah, I think they need to consider, when you have feed shortages or a drought or a weather event, is where are you going to get this from? Your neighbouring area might also have the same problem. There needs to be a greater plan to think on a whole national level of where this feed can come from, how other regions can help, subsidising feed costs to farmers, or the freight, or helping them out in a way that is more accessible to them and will make a bigger difference.
What would you say to Minister O'Connor's point that farmers should have prepared earlier and feed budgeted for the spring in February?
I don't think you'd want to publish my response to his comment, to be fair.
It's hard. Farming depends so much on the weather. You can't predict if you're going to have a dry autumn or a dry winter, and for Hawke's Bay, who are coming off a drier winter last year, it just all compounds up. You can't predict the weather. It's very, very hard.
And you can't predict a global pandemic that has a backlog at processors on top of it.
Exactly. There's just so many unknowns and so many unpredictable factors in this that how on earth is someone going to forecast these sort of events from February to September?
Absolutely. I do want to celebrate the wonderful spirit of generosity that you have done. Thank you so much on behalf of, as I said, everyone listening and watching. Sophie and Daniel Hansen have started the Facebook page Rapper Feed Run. Make sure you jump on there. If they're in the South Island and people want to send feed up, can they communicate through your page?
Yep, so if they do want to, absolutely flick me a message. What we'll do is we'll pick it up and we can put them in touch with the right people in Hawke's Bay who are helping us out as well.
Oh, it's just absolutely heartwarming, the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Sarah's Country. Sophie and Daniel Hansen out of the South Wairarapa there with Rapper Feed Run, the Facebook page. Now, of course, we are talking about what you're most looking forward to under Level 2. I'm starting to get a slow back in people joining in terms of comments, but that's okay. Joel Rock, what are you most looking forward to doing under Level 2?
Leaving Christchurch. It's getting into the mountains, going on a big tramper. I don't know, just leaving Christchurch for a wee bit would be nice.
Taking photos of some different birds.
Yeah, a wee bit of variety. I haven't seen a Kia in ages, so that'll be nice.
Oh, good way to keep Joel Rock happy. Show him a Kia. To end the show, coming up, we're going to talk about China's trade war tactics that have been developing today by the hour. We cross to one of my favourite trade commentators, Chalres Finny, to see how bad New Zealand's reputation is and how safe we can be if we watch our mouth. Can we maintain our trade ties to our largest trading partner? All that coming up soon in Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Oh, I absolutely love seeing who's still here. Kate Taylor, good to see you are here tonight. You're always here. Thank you so much. And she says, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's about the people, the people, the people. So absolutely thank you for sharing that with us, Kate. Now, China has berated New Zealand, saying the country should stop making wrong statements. This is after today's news about supporting Taiwan and its questioning of the World Health Organization about China's response to COVID and how that could be damaging our bilateral ties. Winston Peters doesn't seem so fazed though, and this is just hours ago actually. China has flexed its muscles and punched Australian meat exports in the face. Meat exports banned from Australians' criticism of China. It is of great concern about our relationship with our major trading partner, so a welcome to Sarah's Country. For the first time, Chalres Finny, one of my very favourite trade commentators. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
Can I just say, firstly, thank you so much for your opening address in the Epidemic Response Committee around trade. You brought a lot of sense and light to that conversation. How's things progressed from that?
Well, actually, I'm quite pleased because I came up with a 10-point plan, and I think about 8 of the 10 points have either been implemented or are being implemented. So my views and the views of the government and government advisors obviously weren't too far away from each other. So if only I could achieve that all the time. But it was a very useful process, I think. Good that there's some checks and balances on the government when they're so powerful right now. But I think everyone was, at that time anyway, in a trying to solve the problem mode. And we were talking about some real problems, particularly not really problems of immediate focus to your audience, because it was more the manufacturing sector that had been shut down. The agricultural sector had largely been allowed to be kept going.
You were very in support of opening up forestry and wood exports as soon as possible, though.
Indeed, and that's happened, so I'm pleased. That's one of my 10 points that's been delivered on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hey, now, Charles, it is really concerning. How do we balance a relationship with our major trading partner whilst maintaining support of our other trading partners' support of emissions, such as what's going on at the moment with this COVID response?
Well, I think that the issue you talked about at the start with China criticising New Zealand was more about Taiwan's participation at the World Health Organization Assembly meeting in Geneva next week. And it's something actually we've supported for a number of years. I think actually they may have been complaining most about the way in which the news that we would be supporting Taiwan's participation was delivered by the foreign minister. And he was quite in China's face on that. And I think it was a bit of a tick off for that more than actually us supporting the participation. Because as I say, we've supported it for many years, and actually we're in very good company. Canada, US, UK, Australia, France, Britain, Germany, Japan, all supporting the same position as New Zealand. They weren't being told off today. So I think it was probably something else. But now we have to be very careful. Obviously, we are dealing with a very major economy that is essentially run by one party and one person. So you don't really want to offend that country very often. But I think it's important that we do take positions of principle when we feel strongly on issues. And right now, the world is facing a global pandemic. Taiwan is our 7th largest trading partner. We have normally got large numbers of Taiwanese visiting here, large numbers of New Zealanders visit Taiwan. So actually having them part of the World Health Organization process is in our interests. And I think a lot of the world agrees with us on that one. It's actually in China's interests as well, because there's even more people traveling from Taiwan to China and China to Taiwan than coming to New Zealand.
Jumping across the ditch, this is a really worrying situation. The blacklisting of 4 red meat abattoirs in Australia as a response to China imposing this import ban as a trade war tactic. And of course, the Australian barley industry is heavily affected as well.
Yeah, and it's been very interesting the last 48 hours. Yesterday, we heard that China was potentially going to be imposing anti-dumping duties on Australian barley going back 10 years. And then today we've heard that 4 abattoirs have been delisted for beef exports to China. Now, I'm always a little bit cautious when it comes to things like delisting of meat plants, because there actually might be a technical reason for it. This is only news that's come out today. I'd like to know more before drawing strong conclusions, but certainly Australia-China relations are not fantastic right now, and China has demonstrated over the years that it can use trade as a retaliation for political problems. So something we need to be watching very carefully. You know, Canada's got problems right now thanks to at the request of the United States, arresting the chief financial officer of Huawei, and there's a court case going on, and there's Chinese retaliation against Canada. Indeed, they seem to have got a couple of Canadians in the clangor in China as sort of a bit of a hostage diplomacy as well. So it's very interesting. But in other jurisdictions have faced the wrath of China in the past and suffered trade retaliation. I don't think we should be worried about this at this point in time for New Zealand. I think that we've had our hands slapped by the Foreign Ministry at their press conference yesterday, and we'll take note. But I think our relationship's in reasonably good shape, as Winston Peters says, and I'd be very surprised if there was any retaliation against New Zealand product.
Can't be too good on the friendship when Trump walks out of a press conference today, questions heavily about COVID and says, ask China. How is that developing, this US-China trade war?
I've been watching that also very closely today. There are mixed messages. There are some quite nationalistic Chinese newspapers which are beating the nationalistic drum and threatening not to implement the trade deal that was done last year. But there are other sources which are suggesting actually China is about to drop some more tariffs for the United States. But it's obviously a very fragile relationship, and our good friend President Trump could say the wrong thing, or the Chinese could say something he doesn't like. So anything could happen that could cause that relationship to deteriorate. And as we said at the start, there is this whole issue over investigations into the cause of COVID-19, and obviously the world needs to know where it came from, and we need to learn from it. But to suggest it's come out of a Chinese laboratory is quite an accusation to be made, and the Chinese don't like it and are responding accordingly. Luckily, right now, only with words.
Mel Poulton, our now Special Agricultural Trade Envoy we had on Serious Country the other day, Charles, spoke largely around the rise of global protectionism. And of course, we've seen that for some time in the UK, and particularly towards New Zealand lamb. Are you concerned about this, and should New Zealand be concerned?
I think globally there are some countries who think like New Zealand and have been opening markets as a response to COVID-19, not closing them. But there are more examples of protectionism occurring. Interestingly, even within the EU, there seem to be some EU members being protectionist vis-a-vis other EU members, which I think is causing everyone there and the Commission a lot of concern. So yes, but hopefully other countries will see the light and join New Zealand, Singapore and others, Canada, Australia, in keeping those markets open and keeping trade flowing. New Zealand exports are holding up really well, I have to say, right now, and I hope that continues. I am worried, perhaps not in the short term, but as we move into a global recession, there has to be a trade impact, but we haven't seen too much of it yet. We've been very lucky. I think it's because we produce so much food, and people need food to survive.
Just lastly, while I've got you here, because I would love to extend the invitation to come and have you on Serious Country again, Charles.
Anytime.
Because Tony Watson here, a very big fan of the show, Tony. He says he's having some great insights from listening to you. I've been worrying about these geographical indicators under this New Zealand EU free trade agreement. Mel Poulton assures me that the pedal is still down on making sure that agreement's underway. Where are we at, and what are you hearing?
Okay, well, apparently some quite good progress was made in the last round of negotiations. No one could travel, so it was done by Zoom and other technologies, and actually took a long time because it was sort of time zones got in the way. But there were some quite good achievements, but mainly around technical issues such as customs cooperation. We still don't have an offer from the EU on market access for agriculture. There is an offer apparently that's been tabled for market access for non-agricultural products, and I'm told it's not good enough, but at least they've tabled something. But I'm not sure that the issue of GIs, geographical indicators, is yet resolved, and I think it will be one of those issues that goes right down to the end of the negotiation. Obviously, the paradigm that operates in New Zealand is very different from that in the EU, and we don't believe that we should be using GIs as a protectionist tool, and there's a potential for them to be used as such by the EU. So it's going to be a tough issue, and I think we've probably got many more months of negotiation ahead. But it's great that COVID-19 hasn't disrupted the negotiations too much, and that they are progressing.
I know we've got vineyard owners, and I know Simon Berry from Whitestone Cheese. They will be very concerned in making sure that we keep our medal down on Camembert and Syrah and Chardonnay.
And Brie and everything, yes. Parmesan. Yeah, no, we're used to those terms. They've been used in New Zealand for years. They're traded globally. Our position and the EU's position is very difficult. But of course, look, very different. But if the EU gives us an absolutely fantastic deal and were to give us full free trade in meat and dairy, then I think we could probably compromise. But I haven't yet seen details of that great deal on market access for meat and dairy. We'll need every single amazing brand and marketing mind at the table, Charles, to rebrand our product uniquely New Zealand and make sure that lasts, because it's certainly a hard thing. Chalres Finny, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And as I said, look forward to you joining us again. I would really love to know, you're based in Wellington, how's flying in there on Friday going to be? You should have flown in today. I believe that there is it's definitely going to be raining on Friday. I'm a golfer, so I check these things, and I'm not playing on Friday, but I'm playing on Saturday. So I noticed it's going to be raining. I think there will be a bit of wind, but I don't think you should be too worried. Wonderful. It doesn't seem as though it's going to be a terrible storm. That's what I like to hear, flying into Wellington. Thank you so much, Charles. That's all we have time for tonight here on Chalres Country. And if you've missed any of the previous shows, of course, as we say, we are on podcast on demand first thing in the morning under Chalres Country. If you want to watch back any of the interviews, head to Farmers Weekly on YouTube as well. And of course, I love you sending me your suggestions for your guests. And honestly, I tell you what, there are so many people doing that, and I really appreciate it. It helps produce the show how you want it. So send me an email, sarah@periamedia.com, or send me a little message on Facebook or Instagram, wherever you like to consume your social media. So good night, go well. And as one of my favourite quotes, please remember that something magic is always about to happen.
This is Chalres Country.